This podcast may contain strong language and adult themes. Hello and welcome to the first edition of Voice Notes from Connor. Me, I'm Connor. The Meta podcast where I'll be listening to old voice memos and notes from my past self and responding as my present self. The podcast will be a random assortment of culture, life, a dash of politics. I'm not going to go too hard on the politics for a start. I've told myself we won't go into politics too much, but we might in future series. And there'll be musings, opinions, etc. When I started this podcast, the idea was to speak more about things like music, film, TV, and I'll talk about myself and my interests a bit later on. But then as the process was going on, I was recording voice memos over a long period of time. I ended up thinking, actually, I want to talk about so much more. I have ADHD, and that is so ADHD to actually, have so many thoughts, some of which are shallow, some of which are deep, and I have lots of things to talk about. So I thought I'd broaden it out from just media-based things or film, TV to life and culture, etc. So what you're going to expect is most weeks there will be at least 2 or 3 voice notes from my past self, and then some weeks we're going to feature a guest voice note or voice memo from somebody in my life. For future series, though, we'd love to hear your voice notes or your voice memos, ones that you've perhaps dug up from the past. So you might have gone through your WhatsApp or your iMessages or Facebook Messenger, if you still use that, and you have maybe you could clip that, send that to it, or you could record one specifically to be aired on the podcast. If you'd like to do that, please email your voice notes to vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. That's vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. And you can also find us on TikTok as well as YouTube and do all the usual things that podcast hosts ask you to do, like, subscribe, comment, etc. So in this opening episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. Then we've got a guest voice note from my friend Anthony, and then we'll have a voice note from my past self. So a question you might be asking yourself is, who is Connor? Why would I want a voice note from Connor? Why should I care about listening to past Connor and present Connor responding to themselves? So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself before we get into those voice notes. So I'm 31 years old. I am a lecturer in a college, and I'm also a subject area lead in media studies. I did a PhD in media studies, so you can refer to me as Dr. Connor, thank you very much, or as my family referred to me as Dr. Four Eyes. And that came from, I was in Tesco one day and went to get some chocolate. So I do love chocolate. It's one of my top loves in life is chocolate. And went to get some chocolate, and a woman was there and she had a trolley in front of all of the chocolate. So I mentioned earlier, I've got ADHD, but just part of my personality is impatience, whether it's neurodivergence or whatever. I'm quite an impatient person. So I'm there, I'm tutting, she's not moving. I said, all right, yeah, just leave your trolley in front of all the chocolate. And she says, what did you just say? I said, I stand on business, as most of the youth like to say these days. I stood on business and I said, you've left your trolley in front of the chocolate when people are trying to get it. And she said, fuck off, Four Eyes. She was wearing glasses. She had glasses on. I was absolutely shook, and that takes a lot for me to be silenced. So went home, told my family, that was it. Dr. Four Eyes, it stuck. So there we go. Lecturer, subject area lead, early 30s. I have a PhD. That was in media and cultural studies, so I focused on LGBTQ cinema. That's something I'm still passionate about in terms of, well, just generally in life, but also in terms of like academia and writing and all that kind of stuff. As I mentioned earlier, when I started this podcast, my thought was to have it about media, more specifically, so film, TV, music. And I did previously do a podcast called Connotations a couple of years ago. But yes, I have many thoughts and wanted to speak about much more than just that. So I grew up in Leicester. a fairly unremarkable place. I like it. I've lived here all of my life. So I grew up on a council estate. So I've come from a working class background, which is interesting now, being middle class. So being a teacher and earning more money, etc., is always quite interesting in how I identify in terms of class. But yeah, grew up on a council estate, quite a rough council estate in Leicester, and lived in Leicester all of my life. Went obviously to university here. Went to Birmingham to do my master's and my PhD, but I've stuck in Leicester, and many people will call it a shithole. They don't like it, they hate it, everything else, but I quite enjoy it. So there we go. Tell you a little bit about my interests as well, to give you a bit more of a flavour of my personality before we go into the voice notes. So it's quite obvious that I love things like film, music, TV. Particularly love weird, alternative, strange films. So I don't want to alienate too many people here by mentioning lots of niche filmmakers. But if you're out there and you're a fan of someone like David Lynch or Ingmar Bergman, perhaps, or Claire Denis, like a bit of Stanley Kubrick. People probably know Kubrick out of all of those the most. So yeah, 2001, You're Shining, Full Metal Jacket, etc. So love weird, niche films as well as LGBTQ cinema. Love a bit of quality TV in particular, and this is where you get the Gemini. So I should have mentioned earlier that was a Gemini, and this is where you get those. You get that Gemini come out with TV, because I absolutely love reality TV. So please inject Love Island, Married at First Sight, Celebs Go Dating into my veins. I very much enjoy it, especially after a long day at work, which most people can resonate with. When you've been at work, and I have a very, very social job. So I get drained quite a lot, and that also comes with my neurodivergence. But also I just want to watch something easy. And I'm guessing, I was speaking to a friend recently, I'm guessing that's why people watch soaps. Because they get deep and they get dark and they have deeper, some depressing themes. There's a sense of routine about it, and that's what I quite like with reality TV. So watching things like Love Island and Married at First Sight, it gives that routine. Watching an episode every night, it's quite easy to watch. But then on the other hand, I adore quality television. So anything produced by HBO, Showtime, I think BBC makes some great series, so did Channel 4 as well, ITV. Don't want to start slagging off all of the broadcasters in the UK, because you never know, one day I might be on them. But yeah, so BBC and Channel 4 particularly make some great TV series. So things like Succession, I love, obviously created by HBO or distributed through HBO. Things like The White Lotus as well, absolutely love that. Hacks, if you've not seen Hacks, please watch it. It's on Now TV, so I think it's Warner Brothers actually that make it, but you can access it in the UK through Now TV. It is such a good TV show. Music, I reside on the popular end of the spectrum, I would say, and there is a voice memo about music tastes. So my producer Evan has scheduled the voice note, so I don't know when that's going to come in series 1, but I know there is one, obviously because I recorded it. There is one about music taste, which we'll get into then. But yeah, I'm on the popular end of the spectrum. I enjoy disco, dance, house. Do enjoy a little bit of hip hop as well. I felt so white saying that then, but there we go. Do enjoy a bit of hip hop and R&B. Basically everything but heavy metal and rock and that end of the spectrum. Although I don't judge people, they tend to judge others. I don't judge those people that like those kind of genres of music. So kind of coming across as a bit of a basic bitch at the minute. Besides the weird cinema when it comes to music and TV and stuff, but there we go. I enjoy reading as well. So although that's very ADHD with me reading, because sometimes I don't know if other people, neurodivergent or not, will resonate with me here. Pick up a book, I really get into it, and one day I just think, I'm done. Don't want to read this anymore. I'm halfway through the book and I just won't read it, or I will put it down and I'll pick it up 6 months later to continue reading it. Although, latter end of 2024 into 2025, I did read 6 books in a row without stopping. Young Mungo. If you've not read Young Mungo and you enjoy reading, highly recommend. I also read A Little Life as well, which is incredibly, incredibly bleak and beautiful and depressing at the same time. What else about me? So I enjoy a Pepsi Max Cherry. I enjoy a New England IPA, a Dr Pepper. Particularly enjoy barbecue beef hula hoops are fantastic as well. I like a walk in the countryside, in nature. Thoroughly enjoy going out for a coffee. So coffee and I have had an interesting relationship over the years. And I went through a stage where I was just like coffee all the time. And now I quite like the novelty of going out for a coffee. So I don't like to have a coffee every day. But yeah, that still gives me a bit of dopamine, a bit of serotonin. Going out for a coffee, basic bitch. Oat milk cappuccino is a particular favourite of mine. So I love going out for a coffee. British, so I love going to the pub, of course. Don't drink as much as I used to, of course. I'm early 30s now, so the hangovers are deadly. So, don't go to the pub as often. What else do I like? I think that's about it. I think we can get into the voice memos now, and that gives you a good enough idea of my personality. Before we listen to the voice notes, one from my friend Anthony and one from my past self, I also thought it'd be worth just discussing the rationale for the podcast and where the idea came from. Because I've mentioned, haven't I, so far about like I was going to talk about media and I was going to do this, I was going to do that, but why make a podcast where I'm listening to my past self? So in December of 2022, I had what could be described as a bit of a breakdown. Work was really stressful, life was really stressful, and I was really, really struggling and had to have some time off work. That led me then to start therapy. I wanted to start therapy way before that, but either couldn't really afford it, wasn't in the mental space, and on one hand, it's a bit unfortunate that something like a breakdown pushed me to start therapy, but on the other hand, it's the best thing I've ever done. If you're thinking about doing it and you can afford it, or maybe you could get it through the NHS, please do it. It's so cringy and cliche and cheesy, but it is life-changing. And through that, obviously, through therapy, you are talking about yourselves. And that's like a strategy that can be used, right? So your past self, who you were when you were much younger, the child version of you, your present self, and then also, which I've done through some life coaching, your future self. So what are your goals? So that's something I've been interested in for quite a long time, is past selves, present selves, future selves, and that idea. And that's when I was thinking about doing a new podcast. I mentioned earlier I'd done one series of a podcast called Connotations, where I analysed media, so film, TV, and music, and kind of dug beneath the surface of a few different media products. I then was thinking, okay, so I want to do another podcast, but what is it going to be? And that's, through therapy and things I've explained so far, I thought actually it'd be quite interesting to go through that process of listening to my past self. I also advise doing that, by the way. So voice notes you've sent, a lot of people say to me, oh my God, how can you listen to yourself? How can you go back and listen to yourself? And I should have mentioned this earlier, actually. I don't think I mentioned it in the... I'm looking at Evan now, my producer, if I mentioned about being queer and non-binary. I did mention that, yes, sorry, my memory's gone there, but yes. So in terms of like growing up queer... And I don't really think I need to say it, did I? You can guess the queer part, maybe just through my voice, or seeing me if you're watching this on YouTube. But kind of hating my voice and feeling quite like ashamed of my voice. Then, as I grew up, coming to terms with my identity and stuff, when I started voice noting, I listened to them back, which some people might think is quite narcissistic, but I did it on purpose to almost train myself into being able to listen to myself and not be ashamed of myself either. So now I'm like, yeah, I'll listen to my voice back. And most people are like, how? I absolutely hate listening to my voice back. But I do advise doing it. I do recommend doing it because it can help you in terms of your self-esteem as well. But yeah, so thinking about past selves and stuff, that's where we are now. So I might disagree with my past self. I might agree. I might be somewhere in between, but I think it's going to be interesting to have that dialogue with myself, but different versions of myself. And that might even lead you to think about that. What was my past self? How have I changed? How have I not changed? What do I still believe in? That might lead you to reflect on your core values, etc., which it's done for me as well. And I'm really excited, actually, to listen to some of them back to think about, God, I was in a bad mood that day, or I totally don't think that anymore, or maybe I do, and as you can tell so far, I can talk a lot. So I'll be able to elaborate on some of those thoughts that my past self had. Right, let's get into it. The first voice note from my past self. People who need a resolution to a film or a TV programme, or let's just say generally a story, are annoying and basic AF. Basic as fuck. Why do you need a story to be tied off? Why do you need everything to be explained to you? Okay, I get it. Sometimes you do want a story to be neatly wrapped up. You might have gone into a film or a TV series with the intention of escapism and entertainment. You don't necessarily want to be challenged by a piece of media. In general, though, for me anyway, it's a subjective viewpoint that I also do feel has a stake in being objective, is that art and media should challenge, that it shouldn't be clear-cut, that there should be ambiguity, ambivalence. Text, like media text, should be open to different interpretations and shouldn't be closed to one type of ending or interpretation. And when people say, I don't really get it, like, what happened at the end, or you didn't get to find out, and therefore suddenly it's a bad film, TV programme, a bad narrative. And I'm like, God, so fucking basic. Come on. Right, so I wanted to laugh so many times about that because I was clearly feeling very passionate that day. The start of the voice note, you can even tell I've got like anger in my voice, like I'm angry about this topic. And to be fair, I often am quite angry about this topic, and I do very much agree with my past self there. So people, I think it's ironic slightly that I said there about basic so much, and then the introduction to this podcast, I call myself a basic bitch many times, and I do have some basic, we all have basic elements, I suppose, to our personality in some way or another. But in this way, it does infuriate me because it's criticism that can often get levelled at a lot of different types of films. And I also feel like it's quite weak, especially when you see it in reviews of films, and that's like a review point or an analytical point of a film is, oh, it didn't actually tell us what it was about. It didn't give us the solutions that we needed or the resolutions that we needed. We didn't return to, say, like a new equilibrium at the end, which I do find really basic because, as I said, my past self said there, I do think it's incredibly important that art and media and culture does challenge people. I said earlier, I like to go home, I like to watch Married at First Sight and Love Island, and I like easy things. We all want an easy film. I might put on something like Booksmart, for example. If you've not watched Booksmart, I do highly recommend because it's very funny, very easy. Those kind of films that are easier to watch, we need it sometimes. We just kind of want to watch a film that doesn't take too much thinking. Our brain cells, we don't lose. We might lose brain cells actually watching something so basic. But anyway, we just need that. But at the same time, it's really important that people do watch, for me, a range of different types of films. So that's world cinema, so films from East Asia, South America, different European films, and different countries like German films, French films, Italian, Danish, etc. And be challenged and be confronted and expect stories to be presented to you in different ways and not just in a way that comforts you all the time. I understand that people do want comfort from things. You might watch films or TV programs to be entertained and to be comforted. But I think that's also contributing toward a lack of media literacy in a lot of people nowadays. And this is where we go from a shallower thought to we start getting a little bit deeper now. Within this idea of media literacy, people not being able sometimes to see irony and ambiguity and ambivalence, and that there's lots of factors that contribute toward that, which I won't get into now, else this podcast episode will be like 2 hours long. But I think that avoiding those kinds of films and media products that do challenge, that are difficult, that present things in different ways, not consuming those, not interacting with those, can affect things like media literacy. I remember in my early 20s, I went through this stage where I really wanted to be confronted by films. So I watched the films of Lars von Trier, watched films that were extreme or labelled extreme, like Martyrs or Irreversible, two quite extreme French films, and actually went through this process of enjoying being challenged by a film. And I mentioned that I love like weird cinema earlier, and someone like David Lynch, for example, in films like Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, Inland Empire, his most well-known work, which is very well, all things are collaborative, but even more so, something like Twin Peaks that he created with Mark Frost in the late 80s, early 90s, and it returned in 2017, which is one of the coolest things ever in any piece of media ever, is at the end, well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's someone says at the end of Twin Peaks, I'll see you in 25 years, and then 25 years later, they made the next series. That's the coolest thing any human has ever done. But so things like those, so David Lynch's films or TV series, they don't just give you clear resolutions, and that's why a lot of like cult and niche audiences enjoy them, because actually we can talk about them, we can take different interpretations, we can have different opinions, and that's what makes it fun. A film that I think of in relation to this actually is Saltburn. So Saltburn, to me, so there's going to be some spoilers here if you've not seen it, so you might want to pause the YouTube video or the whatever you're listening on. But Saltburn to me signifies this lack of media literacy and this need to pander to audiences and give clear resolutions. I found it quite patronising. I know lots of other people found it quite patronising as well. By the end, where it like really explains the story to you, and it's almost like the film feels like it's pulling the rug from underneath you, and it's like, oh, here's like a twist, here's a shock, but really it's not. Or the resolution it gives you is like, well, we didn't really need this resolution. We all could have inferred this, and it makes it a richer film. It makes it a more interesting story and a more interesting narrative. But by telling us what it means at the end, suddenly I feel like, well, actually, there was more enjoyment here in me discussing it with my brother or family member or a friend of what things mean. What were these motivations, rather than let's just lay out all of this person's motivations. I'm doing quite well here, actually. I'm not giving too many spoilers away if you've not seen it, to be fair. That's something I also talked about in my previous podcast, Connotations. I analysed Saltburn, and most of the film is very enjoyable, and it's well acted, it's well directed, it's a very good film. And then you get to the end and you think, why did you need to spell it out? And why do we need to have that clear resolution at the end? So I think, my message here, I suppose, is challenge yourself now and again. If you're someone that does... Really, I'll try not to be so harsh as I was in my voice note before, as my past self was. I'll try and be a little bit more compassionate here. If you are somebody who enjoys being comforted, or you just want a clear resolution or a nice, happy ending, that's all. Or even not happy, right? Just an ending that tells you everything here has been wrapped up, everything's kind of done, there's no space for ambiguity. Sometimes it is a bit infuriating. In European cinema does it quite a lot. I could think of something like The Piano Teacher by Michael Haneke, where at the end, another spoiler. Anyway, the ending is very like unremarkable. It cuts off at a place where you think, really, we're going to cut now? And I've watched quite a lot of European films that do that. I think they think it's quite autistic to do that, to like cut it off at a certain point. So sometimes you think, oh, it's a bit annoying. But go and watch a film that challenges you, and I think it will in some way enrich your understanding of media, or enrich your consumption of certain films and TV shows. To conclude this first episode of Voice Notes from Connor, we have a guest voice note from my friend Dr Anthony Stepniak. Just to introduce him before we listen to his voice note. So Anthony and I became friends first in 2018. We won't talk about why we were not so close for a while, and then we've recently reconnected. Anthony is deputy head of the School of Media at the University of Northampton. Like myself, he also is, I suppose, interested in queer cinema as a queer person himself. And I'm looking forward to this voice note. He does like to talk quite a lot, so I think this one's going to be a fairly long voice note from Anthony, but here we go. Over to Evan. Cue us in.
Hello, Connor. So I watched a meme or a little reel the other day that was talking about the impact of serialized drama or episodic drama TV shows now being streamed, and the fact that you can just binge it all in one go, especially if it's new release. And this really played on my mind, especially as, you know, we both recently watched How It Feels to Be a Girl. What It Feels to Be a Girl. I can never remember which one it is. And that's the kind of show where I think I would have wanted to watch that and it be released every week. Because from a viewing perspective, I think there's something to be said about when I was growing up and when you'd have been growing up, thinking, actually, I'm coming to the end of this episode and it's like the big moment, and then I've got to wait until next week for the next episode. And I think there was actually something to that. There was a viewing appreciation to that, right? Which has now been lost. And I think sometimes, like, if it's already existing pre-release content on a streaming service, fine, sit down, watch it all, get it all out there, comfort watch. But if it's something new, if it's something that you're watching that's been released, I want that. I want to know what's going to happen next week. Okay, don't say it's got to be on at a certain time. Just release it at a certain time that week, and then you can stream it any time that week. But I'd really enjoy that much better. And I think the thing of being able to just watch something, also, from a creative perspective, does it not affect, why do episodic drama? Why not just make one massive, long, like, never-ending clip that you just pause when you want to then? Because the thing of the art of the episode is lost, right? Because it's a bit like the big EastEnders dum 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 moment. What's the point if you can just watch the next episode straight away? You don't need to end on that high or that tension point or that cliffhanger, because you just can carry on. So it kind of ruins that. And I definitely think, and I'd be interested to see what you think of, whether these kind of streamed original content have actually lost that episodic structure of the cliffhanger and the ending, and has meant that you can not just watch it through. And also, it's great, like, you don't have to have the impatience of waiting, but there's something fun about watching something and wanting to know what's coming next and kind of shouting at the telly, and I feel that's lost with just being able to watch it all in one go.
Okie dokie. So, firstly, the title of the TV series Anthony referred to there was What It Feels Like for a Girl, which is based on the autobiography of Paris Lees, who is a trans woman who is now a journalist and a writer, and had written a book called What It Feels Like for a Girl, who grew up as a boy and as a male and then transitioned. And the book chronicles her life from the age of 13 to 18, and the TV series does the same thing. It's brilliant. It's really well made. It has that gritty urban realism, has lots of naturalistic acting. It has some lighter elements, darker elements, very much represents what British TV does really well with that blend of comedy and drama. Something else that does that really well is like This Is England, and This Is England TV series 86, 88, 90 does that really well with the realism, the naturalism, the comedy, the drama. And What It Feels Like for a Girl, I think, is a very important TV series because it also doesn't just make the whole thing about being trans. That's like an element of the story, and there's so much more to it than that, and so much more to Byron's life at that point, and obviously Paris's life as they transition near the end of the TV series. That's not too much of a spoiler there. So I do recommend watching that. I think Anthony's makes some interesting points about binge TV, streaming, viewing habits. And I was thinking actually of some of the stuff I've talked about already in terms of like being basic and why people need clear resolutions. And I think that might actually feed into some of the stuff I was talking about earlier, because people now do want things straight away. And they want to keep seeing what happens in a story without that tension, if you like, without maybe feeling like discomfort, if you want to call it that, of like what's going to happen next. Or for some people that would be excitement, right? Like you'd be like, let's talk about this with people at work, let's get theories. I mean, fans have been doing that for decades. One of the earliest iterations of the internet was like fan forums and chat rooms of people talking about what's going to happen. Twin Peaks was big for that. I've already mentioned Twin Peaks, and I'm going to mention Twin Peaks again because it's quite important for some of the stuff that Anthony was talking about in his voice note. But it can be exciting for some people, and some people it's just like annoying, or like, for God's sake, I just want to watch this. I've got a free Saturday at home and I want to finish this story. Personally, I think it's actually, all of this discussion is genre dependent and mood dependent. So I keep flicking a Gemini, keep flicking between things and being like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, oh God, I loved binge watching that series. Like what it feels like for a girl, I enjoyed watching that. I was off work, I had time, I watched 8 episodes over about 3 or 4 days, and I liked that. And I'm someone who likes things in little doses. So I said earlier, I love chocolate and these other things, but not loads in one go, like in little bits. And I'm the same actually with TV. Even if 10 episodes is available in one go, I will watch 2 episodes one day, 1 episode the next, 1 episode the next, etc. I won't just normally watch it all in one day, whereas obviously some people really enjoy doing that. Other things though, like I go to Succession. So I'd watch series 1, 2, and 3 of Succession as like a kind of like a binge, or like one a day. And then series 4 came out and watched it weekly, and oh my God, that was like platinum tier TV. Such an experience being able to, it's just a fantastic series with like everything that makes a moving image piece of media outstanding. It has incredible acting, dialogue, cinematography, a blend of humour and drama, and like ambiguity, deeper themes, character motivations, all that kind of stuff. But then watching it weekly, like voice noting friends, talking on group chats about it, was so exciting and just such an experience. So I think there's quite a lot to say. Again, I could talk about this for ages, and we could be here for like 2 hours. But I do think it is like genre dependent as well. It's mood dependent. So at times I want to have a binge, other times I don't. So I think it's quite nice when broadcasters or streaming, so it's more broadcasters actually, so like Channel 4, BBC, have it available in 2 ways. So you could go onto the iPlayer and watch all 8 episodes at once, or if you wanted to, you could then watch it on BBC 1, 2, 3, whatever, once a week, Thursday, 9 o'clock, for example, and do it that way. So actually they're hitting different types of audiences and different audience needs and desires, because that shifts over time as well. Obviously, you can't do that on Netflix and Prime and those, because they're purely streaming. Oh, no, you can actually, sorry. No, they do release things, don't they? Sometimes weekly or whatever, but they're known more for binge watching. What I found the most interesting, though, what got the brain whirring there, particularly the more academic side of my brain, was that idea of like, why make something into episodes? Why not just make it really long and then you can pause it when you want? That reminded me of Twin Peaks: The Return, which came back in 2017, because that was actually filmed as a film. It was a 550-page-ish script. They filmed all of it like a film, and then they cut it up into 18 episodes. So that's debated across film studies and TV studies scholars and other people and fans online, where they'll say, is it a film or is it a TV series, or is it both? Do we look at the production context? Do we look at where it was obviously available? It was available on Showtime when it first came out, and you can currently watch it on Now TV and Mubi as well. Mubi's fantastic if you do like alternative, different world cinema, etc. So yeah, it kind of got me thinking about that, and also that would be an interesting thing for a producer to do, actually, is to make something that's maybe like 6 hours and then go, you can pause it when you want, you can come back to it. I don't know if that's already been done. If you could let us know, actually, maybe on TikTok or email, vnfcpodcast@outlook.com, and let us know if you do already know of that. But I think that would be very, very interesting. I don't think people would buy into it. I think people, a lot of people do prefer that binge. I don't think people would want to pause it, but it's worth having a go. I think Anthony's, if you're a producer out there, he's just giving you a fantastic idea to try. But I suppose to summarise, really, I think on a personal level, it does depend on the TV programme. I think shorter, so episodes that are maybe 25, 30 minutes lend themselves well to a binge. I think something that's really rich in story, it can be very exciting to have it drip-fed to you. I will say, though, it's just popped into my mind, actually, when The Last of Us was on Now TV fairly recently, I did want that as a binge. That was weekly, And about episode 3, I was thinking, oh, for God's sake, I want to see the rest of this story. Can you just give it to me now? I just want what else is, I just want to see what else happens. I don't want to see anything online. I don't want to know what happens in the game because I've not played them. And I thought, some of that Series 1 was great, but parts of Series 2 was outstanding. And that's another thing. If it's so good, sometimes you just want more of something that's really good. So I think for me, certain broadcasters or platforms having it available in 2 formats is the best thing. But yeah, an 8-hour. But again, I think that would bring into the question about would people consider it a film or TV? Is TV what makes TV? Is it because it's episodic? Then basically, if you just made a really long film and then people will pause it when they want, because I do that with films. If I watch a 3-hour film, I won't always watch it in one go, which people really, that are into cinema have a go at me about. They're like, what? You need to consume this all in one go. Whereas I'll think, I can take a toilet break here, watch it at home. I can watch half today, half tomorrow, and I still get the story and still enjoy it. But yeah, if you're a producer out there, I think I'd give that a go. That brings us to the end of episode 1, the first ever episode of Voice Notes from Connor. I hope you enjoyed listening to some of my ramblings there from my past self as well as Anthony. So thank you again to Anthony for doing that voice note and sending it in. Just a reminder that you can send your voice notes in as well to vnfcpodcast@outlook.com, and you can also find us on TikTok and YouTube as well. Thank you very much. Ciao for now. You've been listening to Voice Notes from Connor. Created, hosted and starring me, Connor Winterton. Produced and edited by Evan Greaves. If you'd like to get in touch, you can message us on TikTok and YouTube. And if you'd like to get in touch via email, our email address is vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. You can send us any feedback, any thoughts on the episodes, as well as your own voice notes that might make it into future episodes or future series. So that was vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. Thank you very much.